Very nice introduction. I didn't know I was that great. I didn't know that. Anyway, you learn every day. Unlike Alan, this is not my first time in Estonia. I have been traveling around the world for many years. I've worked at 3 Swedish universities, including University of Stockholm, where I ran the first program, master program on entrepreneurship, which I'll be back to. And 1 week before graduation, we brought the students over by boat every second year to Finland, and the other year to Tallinn. So I've been there many times. And around the beginning of June, an excellent period of the year to come to this place. Let me see if I can do this. I say, can you really teach entrepreneurship? Of course, you can always teach about the subject. It's a long subject, history-wise, 300 years and so on. You can always talk about what we think we know of as scholars and how it can present itself in different contexts, etc. Right? But the more critical question is, can really somebody tell somebody else in a crowd, as we do as teachers, how to do and manage yourself to become a successful entrepreneur? That is a much more critical question. That's the one I want to address. To make my start, I'd like to make a few conceptualizations. That means provide my ideas, differences between some subjects. Enterprising to me means much more than entrepreneurship. I would say to be an entrepreneur is only some kind of enterprise. I can be very enterprising in this room, rearrange your seats, etc., right? But this is not entrepreneurship. Also, to me, entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean small business. You can be very entrepreneurial in big business as well. And you must be in order to sustain yourself as a big business, by the way. Same thing to me, entrepreneurship means necessarily to be innovative. But not all innovations means entrepreneurship. And same thing with self-employment. You can be self-employed. For instance, you can educate yourself as a hairdresser and start a business, but that's not very entrepreneurial, is it? Not in my opinion, it isn't. So to me, entrepreneurship means to find new solutions to old or new problems. New is essential. It doesn't necessarily mean radical new. It must be new in some aspect. It could be if you run a restaurant, could be its location, could be the menu, the service, etc., etc. Right? I think, in my experience, I've been going on studying this subject for about 30 years. I can see a clear diversion into 2 different directions of entrepreneurship. One which you may call the narrow view, which you can characterize by the following. There's a common profile among all entrepreneurs. To be powered as an entrepreneur means that you want to achieve something. It's an economic phenomenon. Growth is important. You have to find and exploit opportunities. It's a special kind of manager. There's business planning, extraordinary behavior among extraordinary people. That's something of a traditional view of entrepreneurship. The more modern view is what I call a broad view. Entrepreneurship is a very individual thing. It's to be powered by not achievement, but by imagination. Entrepreneurship belongs to the whole society, not only to its economy. To be entrepreneurial is not necessarily related to growth. And I use the following expressions. To be an entrepreneur means not just to be, for instance, a student or a teacher or a woman, whatever, something more. And also act as if sometimes act as if you're on the road of success even if you haven't hardly started. That's one example of as if. There are many other examples. Entrepreneurs are not managers. Too much planning may stifle creativity. And finally, it's about, to me, extraordinary actions among ordinary people. So this is the view that I belong to. To be entrepreneur to me means that you have to involve your whole body. Your brain, your heart, your stomach, and your limbs. You must understand something of what it's all about. Heart, you must have the passion, the willingness. I want to do this. You must have the guts, the courage. And finally, you must do something, act. And unfortunately, many courses on entrepreneurship stops with the first one. And that, to me, is the minor part of entrepreneurship. I also think about different ways to start a business. You can do it rationally, by make your goals very clear to you, which is called causation. And you can also make the means very clear to you, which is referred to as effectuation. But to me, I can see a third version of starting a business, which is more of interest. It's more of interest to me, which I think more and more new business starters or entrepreneurial venture starting are of the natural kind, which a model I took from Lévi-Strauss, which is a French sociologist, anthropologist, that you have an interest in finding solutions. That's how you start. You want to do something with your business, or with your lives rather. And you have a kind of a dialogue and action between three alternative ways to think: resources at hand, making do with what you have, recombination of resources for new purposes, and you try to create a new context in which you're much more happier to be part of. That's what I refer to as a natural start for the business or an entrepreneurial venture. Doesn't mean, of course, that natural starts are very irrational. Doesn't also mean that rational starts are very unnatural. That's not the point. Right? Just, to me, it's a useful distinction between the two. And I can take myself and my family. Myself, I started 4 businesses, of which 3 are still existing, of which I still own 1. And the first one I started was very rational. I thought I saw a market opportunity, and I started a business. And then something happened in the environment which made me fail. I had to close the business only after 2 months. But the other 3, I did it because I wanted to do something with my life. Do something more than just teaching or whatever. I also have 3 children. All 3 of them are entrepreneurs today. And they certainly didn't do it the rational way. They don't want to do something with their lives. And I'm very proud of the 3, I'm telling you. So these are a bit more in detail what these 3 activities mean. Resources at hand is to use what comes in handy. Skills are used pragmatically for dealing with new challenges. Existing social networks are very important resources. Second one, recombination of resources for new purposes, paste together and reuse what is at hand. Play with what you have, check what works, evaluate, modify and reject. Because nobody knows beforehand when you do something new what the end result will be. Making do, advice towards action and active engagement with problems. Test, take for granted limitations and acts of improvisation. This, to me, is the better model, or maybe I would call it interpretation, what it means to be an entrepreneur in modern life, with a broad view as a background. I also make a difference between effectuation and natural entrepreneurial startups. Let's take the model of cooking, which originally was provided by the scholar who made the distinction between the two of causation effectuation, Saraswati. She said that to do it effectuation way is to cook a meal with what you have at hand. Look at your kitchen. What do I have? And you cook a dinner with that one, right? But the difference to me between a natural and effectuation way is that that same set of ingredients can be used at any time, any place, and still be the same dinner. But to do it the natural way means that you're very dependent on the time and place you are at the moment. For instance, suppose you have a garden and you outside you can see some flowers and you pick them up and you use them as decorations of your meal. So you create raw material in a sense. You can also create labor when you're cooking. Suppose you have some good friends over for dinner and you tell them to come beforehand and be part of the cooking itself. Right? It's just an example of the time and the place and its consequences for running a business, natural. Also, to me, it's important to make a distinction between networking at different levels. Usually, networking stops at the first level, exchanging information. But that's more of net than working, so I'm saying. So, and it's very hard, but also important to realize it's possible through natural startups to be a co-creator, do something with those who are supposed to use what you come out with and present to markets or other kind of users. Key questions to me is how can you teach entrepreneurship as individuality? How can you teach passion? How do you teach courage? How do you teach the power of imagination? The ability to take action as an ordinary person? Co-creative networking. How do you teach to do something out of the ordinary, to just not be? And how do you teach not to be restricted by existing resources, to act as if? These are questions which are important to me and very important to ask yourself if you want to be a good teacher, telling someone else how to succeed as an entrepreneur. And I would like to present the way I tried to do it. And I worked at Stockholm University between 1999 and 2006. Hey, this is one. During this period, I had about 120 students enrolled, and I checked afterwards that about half of them today run their own business, which to me is a very good statistic. They didn't even have to have a business idea or any kind of business plan before they came. How to teach entrepreneurship as individuality? Well, I allowed anyone, the only requirement was to have the first degree to start this program. And I had so many different kinds of students. I had doctors of medicine that were tired of working hard as a doctors to want to start their own business. I had nutritionists, I had midwives, I had students counselors, any kind of person from many different environments enrolled in my studies. Half of the value that was assessed in the student's application would consist of a personal letter and an individual interview to see the individual possibility of people. That was very important and very rewarding. About 20% of the applicants were accepted, which made the accepted students feel a bit special. I came in, I was admitted. That made me feel special as an individual. Students were allowed to decide about 1/4 of the content of the program themselves. So after 75%, or when we approached 3/2 of the studies, students can tell me what should we do the remaining 25% of the time. Because I didn't know beforehand what kind of students I will have in. So each year we have different ideas what to do the remaining 25% of the time. 20% of the students left before they graduated because they learned what they wanted, and you don't have to go to school for 2 years
and complete it to say, now now I have the skills of an entrepreneur. You can do it beforehand, depends on what you require as an individual. Because they may have found a job. You don't have to be completing any kind of a degree, you can still be a very good entrepreneur. So these are aspects of individuality that I promoted in my program. How to teach passion. It was possible to get quite a good idea what passion the participants had from their personal letters and from their interviews. If you read some of those letters, you really have a feeling these are people with passion. And one way to express it is through words in a letter and in an interview. We as program supervisors made sure to show in every part of the program that entrepreneurs are driven by passion. Not by coming up with a good idea, not with a solid plan, or having found an opportunity. You really want to do it. Try to prove that and try to make that happen among students. And we worked very hard for students to have as much fun as possible. Fun is important. One of my favorite authors, Arthur Koestler, wrote a book which is called The Act of Creation. And he had a very simple but very clever theory. He said, in order to develop progressively as a person, as a human being, you must have three kinds of experiences. One is the experience of Isn't it beautiful? The aesthetic experience. And the second one is, aha, I got it. Right? The third one is also very important. That's have fun. Very, very important. Simple but clever theory. How to teach courage. Every student was given as much support as possible from us, as from fellow students, for any idea, no matter how crazy it looks like, or odd it sounded at first. We pointed out, in theory and practice, that coming up with a new solution did not mean new in any radical sense. And we showed by practical examples that most entrepreneurial ventures start small and they start local. How do we teach the power of imagination? That was an interesting part of it. Well, all students worked for 2 weeks together with students from the Center for Arts and Scenic Action at Stockholm. This is a school that has fostered quite a few famous actors and directors, including Ingmar Bergman, if you ever heard the name. He was the chief of it for a period. And I was very happy because the first year I had 2 students that have finished their career as actors and want to start a business, of the skills of how to present yourself in the tough life of the modern world. So they allowed my students to come there and work and how to understand the importance of the body language, understand the importance of how to express yourself, to read other people. Because in a low context society like Sweden, we are not very good psychologists. Unlike high context cultures like Chinese or Arabs, for instance. They are able to read the whole body. We are very bad at that from our part of the world. Yes, including your place as well. A very interesting part was halfway. Students should, during a period of 10 weeks, present how much have they learned about entrepreneurship so far and made a presentation. But they were not allowed to do it in traditional paper with words. They have to present it any other way they wanted. And we had great fun during those weeks. Students, they performed a play. They produced a video. They could make paintings. One student, second year, she came from another education in modern arts, and she changed the game. I guess you have heard the game Monopoly. She changed it into entrepreneurship. Fantastically well done. I have it home still. Students could paintings and gave it to me, presented themselves to understanding of an installation of arts. So many ways to do it, and we had great fun. I remember one group of students once wrote the children's story, and we drew all the curtains down, put living lights on the floor of the classroom, sat down in a ring, and 3 students that made that report told us the story. The children's tale. And of course I was the king, and my assistant was the knight. So it's about a dragon that's supposed to save the princess from the tower, you know that traditional thing. And every one of us was included in that tale somehow. We kind of realized ourselves. I remember once, for instance, one group of people in that play came late somehow. And we remember very well when we went once to Tallinn, and some students didn't realize that Tallinn is 1 hour ahead of us in the west, right? So a lot of students missed the boat coming back, right? These kind of things. We are laughing a lot. Had great fun with it. How to teach the ability to take action as ordinary people. I had visiting lectures, real entrepreneurs, so I made sure never to have any super entrepreneur in the class. Because you couldn't learn from them. They were very unique, very special. So I had, in a sense, ordinary people, but sometimes they had very bad language. They stumbled when they came in and started to talk. But eventually, students realized these are very successful entrepreneurs. Making the students think this way, if he or she can do it, I can do it. How do you teach co-creative networking? Students always worked in groups, and remember, students came from all sorts of corners of society. If you put together, say, 4 students of business, and they try to solve a problem, nothing will happen. Because they're so similar. You just confirm what they knew already when they sat down in a group, right? Put together, say, an historian, and a philosopher, 1 doctor of medicine, 1 lawyer, or becoming lawyer, to start to think, because they present versions of life which they never met before. If you talk to your friends over a beer or a glass of wine or whatever, these are people you know. They are like you. They confirm you, support you, pat your back, etc., right? But if you really dare to meet people with a very different background, it's a version of reality that you haven't seen before. And these, to me, are the grains of creativity. To see similarities in what looks in the beginning to be contradictions. And students often said that the most important thing they had learned during the program was networking and contacts they had made. And remember, many of them didn't have any idea how to run a business when they came, but half of them had one when they finished or a bit later. Sometimes through contacts with other students. Several of the entrepreneurial ventures that students founded after the program came from former students in cooperation. Because students were supposed to run a lot of entrepreneurial things. Which is this. How do you teach to do something out of the ordinary, not just to be? It was done in 3 ways. They worked together with the members of the science faculty to develop a specific research results from this faculty into some kind of commercialization. There are various departments at the University of Stockholm. Could be in medicine, could be in physics, could be, these hard sciences, so to say, and they had sometimes invention, and the job for my students was to see how can you turn that into a business. A very interesting exercise in many cases. They also, myself and my assistant, we had quite a good lot of contacts out around the city of Stockholm, where you have about 20% of the economy of Sweden, is around Stockholm. And a lot of entrepreneurial activities that goes on out there in practice. And sometimes entrepreneurs who want to be more entrepreneurs, come and meet a challenge, and they don't know how to go further. I remember one, for instance, who brought a whole block, and he wanted to turn it into something of an entrepreneurial venture. So he gave a mission to my students to tell him what to do with that block of buildings. And the winners, after presentation of the findings among the students, was awarded 20,000 Swedish kronor. And all that remaining of their studies, they went around presenting themselves as the 20,000 group. These kind of things. Ordinary people, they did something out of the ordinary. They had, with some support from us, to arrange their own Christmas parties, their own alumni network. Every Christmas we were supposed to have a Christmas party. But we said you don't get any money from the school. You have to start a lot of activities to kind of raise the funds to have those Christmas parties. And they had great fun out there in the city, dressed themselves as Santa Clauses and performing things and collecting money. And they had to invite all former students into that Christmas party. Great fun, telling you. A lot of networking was going on among ordinary people that realized I can do something in my life out of the ordinary. And many students came a long way to realize their ideas or what to do after graduation, already when they were in the program. Finally, how to teach not to be restricted by existing resources, to act as if. Well, in all assignments, students were never asked to provide any quantitative plans or what was needed in terms of resources to succeed in the actual case. Therefore, learning that it is more important to place oneself in a co-creative environment for learning and act so interestingly that needed resources will be generated from outside as they move on with what they want to do in their entrepreneurial project. So in principle, this is my final slide. So in principle, I would say I do not think that we can really teach the essence of entrepreneurship. The best we can do is to foster it and kind of inspire to it. And I would like to use a quote from one good film I saw. The film is called The King's Speech. It's about, they tried to train the late King George VI, father of the present British Queen. He was heavily stammering. And it was during the Second World War. So he had to kind of inject some kind of willingness among the British people. And so that guy, Australian, he was a speech therapist. And he said, mid through the film, that remember, what I'm doing is to provide you with some tricks. I think that's what I've done as teacher as well. That you can never become a real successful king's speaker unless you really, within yourself, want to be really rid of your stammering. So I think that's the same thing with entrepreneurs. If you really are not into it and want to be it, if you have, as the next speaker is talking about, having an entrepreneurial mindset, you will never start it, right? Thank you very much. I don't do it in...
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your most inspirational speech. And I'm inviting questions.
Good presentation, thank you very much. I have a question. In the universities, lecturers have to assess everything. Do you have any suggestions how to assess someone's courage, imagination, or things like you mentioned?
Well, this was the first program at that university, and I found out many things myself, but one thing I couldn't do anything about was the rules that were governing. I had to write a master thesis at the end. That had to be done in a very university way. And in those days, it was such that even if you wrote a master thesis together with someone else, it should be possible somehow, from the teacher's point of view, to see who did what, to grade everyone individually. That rule doesn't exist anymore in Sweden. You can do things together with others, right? So somehow, of course, you had at the back of your head what that student had done in other parts of your studies, and that sometimes could tip the grade to their favor if they've done some good things in other aspects of the program, or on the negative side if they haven't shown any entrepreneurial talents. So of course it was a very individual thing, very subjective thing from the teacher's point of view. I don't believe there's any objective way to grade any student in almost any subject. Maybe mathematics, I'm not sure. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation. You pointed out many times that how important it is to have fun and passion, and we played yesterday with Professor Kip also trauma, and that was also very funny. And my question is, what do you think gamification could be a key of the future learning and teaching?
First of all, basically, if the life is not worth joking about, it's not worth living. That's another thing, right? So I had to, with my students, to enjoy them in a lot of activities that were a bit of an entrepreneurial side, do things differently. And that could include to do it in a funny way outside the classroom, because we were in the classroom only about 20% of our time. We're out there in real life and see what's going on. And we had many classes out in businesses, out in public institutions, etc. Right? And we challenged them a lot. And there was a lot of laughter and cheers and joy in doing so. So meeting in real life, it's not very possible in classroom. If we go out in real life and try to crack some jokes about it, that's one way to progress.
Thank you. I have also received one question. You said that entrepreneurship is not only in small business, but is there small business without entrepreneurship?
Oh, absolutely. I would say, in principle, almost any business that becomes successful starts entrepreneurial. It's very Joseph Schumpeter theory. But most small businesses stop to be entrepreneurial after a while, when they found a formula, a way to succeed, and they continue to do more of the same in kind of a multiplicative way, all right? So they stop many times to be entrepreneurial, but sometimes they have to realize that I have to do something different again, because if I don't do it, I will be overrun by someone else. You know? So the competition is much tougher today. Someone will overrun you if you sometimes don't sit back and think about what can I do differently from now on. But most small businesses in real life are not very entrepreneurial at the present. It might be.
Mm-hmm. So are there any more questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I actually disagree with what he's saying, but I think we're academics, so we can disagree. But one of the interesting things, Bjorn, is that when you look at a lot of businesses that have started, people, I mean, even Bill Gates or Jobs or Branson or Anita Roddick, they never started with the idea of building a massive business. Anita Roddick started with a little shop, taking goods from elsewhere around the world. It's something that very few start big. It all starts from that. But some people don't know that they want to grow, and they use the business just to find themselves. You know, they find by doing the business what they really want to do, so they grow it. Some people don't grow it. Some people develop portfolios of small businesses and so on. But where I would actually, I'd like you to comment, where I'd actually disagree with you a bit, is that there tends to be a view that being self-employed or being a micro-business is not entrepreneurial. Now, many self-employed people are highly entrepreneurial, because they work in very uncertain and complex environments. They don't grow the business, but they're facing all kinds of uncertainties and complexities. Some small businesses aren't, and just, like the corner shop, do this. So I'm not sure that people, but on the other hand, some people who do very simple things, one company that started house cleaning is now big. And all she started with was a Swedish woman in the north, started with cleaning houses. Now she actually has a whole franchise of house cleaning, but she didn't know she was going to do it at the beginning. So you never know, do you, who's going to be the entrepreneur within the small business world. Is that right?
I think we agree in some sense, because I think if you start a business small, with exactly the copy of what already exists, you will not succeed. And I said, to be new doesn't mean to be radically new. It could be small things, great access, different language, different service. But one, you have made a story of it. You don't necessarily have to repeat yourself or find out new ways every second month or so. And also remember that most businesses do not grow. About 1 out of 7 is growing in a country like yours and mine. And also remember one thing, that history is written by survivors and winners. A lot of small businesses started entrepreneurs and they failed. They still taught us something if we look at them, talk to them, and see what they did. So don't judge history by the winners.
Well, I could take you to a lot of small businesses that actually are highly entrepreneurial but don't want to grow. The association of growth with entrepreneurship is a fallacy. It's a mainly American literature fallacy. But you have lots of entrepreneurial small businesses who do not want to grow, who are operating in, like my son's business. I mean, it's 27 people. It doesn't want to grow, but it's in a massively entrepreneurial world. And it's got 30 million of investment capital in it from outside. It doesn't want to grow. It's found a niche. It doesn't want to grow.
Just one final comment, and it's about culture. I mean, today in the world, roughly about 500 million business ventures are being started. 500 million. Of these 500 million, about 400 of them are Asians. Chinese, Indians, Pakistani, and those people. But would you draw the conclusion that these people are more entrepreneurial in the sense of doing things new ways than the rest of the world? I don't think it's so. They're doing it, copying sometimes what we are doing in other parts of the world, but they do it in a new context. So in that sense, it's new. It is not entrepreneurial in a worldwide comparison. It is entrepreneurial in their own little business, in their own little village.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very interesting to follow this battle of giants. Yeah, but we have to go on.
Thank you.